Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher of Texas. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. Good to see you again. So bring us into this move by the Democrats as they arrive very soon in Illinois tonight, what this represents and what sort of signal they're trying to send to the country right now.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for covering this. Certainly this is big news in Texas, but it should be big news across the country. And that's what our Democratic representatives in our state legislature in the Texas House are doing right now. Their move, their trip now really opens up kind of this national front, right, in the battle to protect voting rights and President Trump's assault on our democracy. I heard the guest earlier, I heard the host earlier saying this is really an authoritarian move. It is unprecedented. And that's what we're seeing on the ground in Texas. But Texans are headed across the country to make sure that Americans across the country know that this is happening. It's really important for people to see what is happening here and what it could mean for the rest of the country.
Congresswoman, this is a move that is not without financial risk and political risk, too. In terms of the financial part of it, there's now a $500 a day fine for lawmakers who choose this path, and that can really add up very quickly. And then also the Attorney General Ken Paxton tweeted, and I want to read what he tweeted. He tweeted threatening Democrats with arrest. He said if Democrats ignore their duty to their constituents by breaking quorum, they should be found and arrested no matter where they go. What do you have to say in response to this threat and to Republicans who say that this is just political theater?
Well, I think it's important to point out that they are doing their duty to their constituents. And this map is not doing anything for their constituents other than harming them. And we really need to focus on what, Attorney General Paxton may be threatening them, but what we see is that they are defending their constituents because this map is an attack on democracy itself. And I've testified before the House and the Senate. I have explained that you cannot look at the map that we're currently operating on, where we have 13 Democrats elected to Congress out of 38 seats in a state where that map is already being challenged in court. That map, which was drawn in 2021, already minimizes and dilutes the voices of minority voters across the state of Texas. And so attacking any one of those 13 districts where a majority of minority voters are able to elect their candidate of choice is deeply problematic. Here, they have taken 5 of those seats. They've tried to get rid of 5 seats where minority voters are able to elect their candidate of choice. So it violates the Voting Rights Act, and it's an attack on our right as citizens to have a say in our democracy. So they are defending their constituents and our constituents, my constituents and others whose voices are being taken away. And so I disagree with Attorney General Paxton. I think that they're serving not only their constituents, but the rest of the country, right? Because this quorum break is going to stop consideration for now of this racist Trump map. But they're also sounding a national alarm to all Americans to fight this, because we've already heard that it's going to other states. We've heard that there are conversations. Certainly, Governor DeSantis in Florida has mentioned it. We're hearing reports in other Republican states that they're going to look at their maps. And certainly, of course, we're hearing that in Democratic states, they're thinking about addressing it, because this really is a nationwide issue. But it's starting in Texas. In Texas, we like to say everything's bigger in Texas. But the truth is, this is bigger than Texas, and that's what they are doing today in showing everyone and taking this fight to the rest of the country.
Congresswoman Fletcher, it's Molly Jong-Fast. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Beto O'Rourke yesterday, which is this special session was supposed to be about flooding. You've had this environmental catastrophe. You've had hundreds of people die, or at least 100 people die. And this is what's supposed to be addressed. Do people in Texas understand that this was meant to be about flooding and has become about a Donald Trump's wish list? Do you see that on the ground? Do you see your constituents understanding? We often talk about things breaking through. Is this breaking through to the people of Texas?
I think it definitely is, Molly, but thank you for the question, because I think it's important to point out two things. One, this is a special session. Our legislature had adjourned, and typically the Texas legislature meets once every 2 years and they finish at the end of the spring. And so a lot of people don't even know that the session is happening at all, whether it's supposed to be on flood relief or other things. But what we've seen is that Governor Abbott has used flooding as kind of a cover while we are in an ongoing crisis. People in my community here in Houston are absolutely devastated. We have lost a lot of our neighbors to these floods, and that's true for people across the state. But the Republicans haven't introduced any solutions on flood relief in this session. They've held over 40 hours of hearings on redistricting. They've been in session for 2 weeks, and they haven't put a flooding bill on the floor. They put the redistricting map on the floor. And so I think what we know are two things. One, they're using this as cover for what they really want to do, which is do this redistricting. And two, Governor Abbott didn't actually have to call a special session at all to deal with flood relief. He's done that before. He has the authority to act, and he's used it before. He didn't call a special session after Hurricane Harvey. What he's doing is saying that they need to come back for one reason, but all of the focus has been on the other. And when Texans find out about that, they are outraged. We had a day of action yesterday here in Houston. We were talking to voters all across our community. There were rallies. There were thousands of people that testified at these hearings, but they had maybe 1 day's notice or 2 or 3 days notice for these hearings on these maps. So we have to make sure that Texans know what's happening in the first place. And like I said, Texans are also taking the responsibility to make sure the rest of the country knows, because it is undemocratic. It is an assault on the very foundations and principles that govern our society, and it's all being driven by President Trump from Washington, and we need to make sure that Americans know and that Americans fight back. Texans are leading that fight right now, but we all have to fight back against this effort.
Congresswoman Danny Savalas, federal courts have upheld parts of this map in the past. What legal standard do you believe should apply, and do you think there should be a national uniform framework? And what reforms would you support to take redistricting out of partisan hands?
Well, there are a couple of different things there. I'll say, first of all, I don't think that courts have upheld this particular map that is in place right now. They just completed a trial before a 3-judge panel in El Paso earlier this summer. That decision is still pending. So those judges haven't ruled, but certainly the case was made that Texas gained 2 additional congressional seats, and 95% of the population growth that drove the increase in seats was in Black and brown communities. And the 2 new seats that were drawn where a majority of Anglo voters could elect their candidate. And so we have made the argument, certainly, that we should have more Democratic opportunity seats, certainly, and that minority voters should control more of these districts, have the opportunity to elect their candidate of choice. What you see in Texas is that more than 60% of the state is minority voters, and yet Anglo voters control 65% of the congressional district elections. And so in the 13 districts that are currently represented by Democrats, all of them represent a district where minority voters consistently and reliably elect their candidate of choice. And in the other 35 districts, the Anglo voters have elected Republicans. And so that's a huge challenge. And that's what's coming up on before the court right now. And this presents further challenges. Beyond that, I think Democrats have proposed all sorts of democracy reforms. We saw it in H.R. 1 when we were in the majority, H.R. 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. There are a lot of things we can do to make things fair, but what we can't do is what we're doing right now, which is fighting and doing different things in different states and having this unfairness in states like mine. And so we need to have a national standard, and I think that we can do that, but we have to make sure that Democrats are in charge of the House and the Senate to get that done.
Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And
Thanks
straight
so much,
ahead.
Bud.